For decades, the entire global economy has basically run on one operating system, the US dollar. But what if that system is, well, being rewritten? You see, behind the scenes, there's this quiet but really profound shift happening, where countries are building totally new ways to trade with each other, completely bypassing the dollar. Let's dig into what that actually means. So yeah, this is the big question we're going to explore. And look, this isn't just some dry financial topic. It's really a question about power, control, and what the future of the global order is going to look like. Because the answer, well, it could change just about everything. Okay, but before we dive into this, this potential rebellion against the dollar, we've got to understand the king. Why does the dollar get to wear the crown in the first place? Let's take a look at how the current system was built. So it all goes back to right after World War II. At this huge conference in a place called Bretton Woods, world leaders all got together and agreed to peg their currencies to the US dollar, which at the time was backed by gold. And that agreement, it basically crowned the dollar as the world's main reserve currency. It became the bedrock for all of international finance. So why the dollar? I mean, why not some other currency? Well, it kind of had the perfect recipe. It was backed by a huge, stable economy. It had the support of really strong institutions. And this is the big one. Over time, it just earned a massive amount of global trust. And you can see this dominance literally everywhere you look. Most of the stuff traded around the world, whether it's oil or coffee, it's priced in dollars. Plus, central banks all over the globe, they hold massive stashes of dollars in their reserves as a kind of safety net. And this is the really crucial part. When your money is the money everyone else needs to use, that gives you just a massive amount of financial and even geopolitical influence. It's a seriously powerful position to be in. All right, so if this system gives the US all this power, why on earth are countries now trying to get out? What's really driving this push to, escape the dollar's orbit? It really boils down to three big things. First, there's the risk of getting hit with sanctions. Second, the economic headaches of being totally dependent on another country's currency. And third, it's the simple fact that, hey, new global powers are on the rise. First up, sanctions. You see, because the dollar is the language of global finance, the US can pretty much flip a switch and cut a country off from the entire international system. We've seen this happen with Russia, and the threat of being locked out is a huge motivator for countries to find a backdoor. And then there's the whole issue of currency dependence. If your country's trade depends on the dollar, your economy is basically riding the roller coaster of US policy and the dollar's value. Think about it. A decision made in Washington, D.C. about interest rates can cause real economic pain halfway across the globe. So, okay, countries aren't just sitting around complaining about this. Nope, they're actively building the plumbing, the nuts and bolts, for a whole new system. This is where it gets really interesting. One of their go-to tools is something called a currency swap, and it's actually a really clever workaround. Basically, two central banks just agree to exchange their own currencies with each other. This lets businesses in those countries trade using, for example, the Chinese yuan directly. Boom, the dollar is just completely cut out of the equation. And we're seeing this play out in a couple of key ways. You've got currency swaps, which are these deals between central banks for financial stuff. But then you also have bilateral trade agreements, where two countries agree to trade specific things, like oil for yuan or textiles for rupees, using their own money. At the end of the day, both methods do the exact same thing. They get the job done with no dollar in sight. And then you've got the big one, the BRICS strategy. Now, this isn't just two countries making a little side deal. This is a coordinated move by huge economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They're looking at creating their own shared payment systems, maybe even a common currency. This isn't just a little workaround. This is a full-blown, long-term challenge to the dollar's reign. Okay, so let's game this out. If these strategies keep gaining steam, what does the world actually start to look like? What are the real consequences of a global economy where the dollar isn't the only game in town? Well, for one, we could end up with a more fragmented system, with these regional currency zones, like a yuan bloc in Asia or a stronger euro bloc. That could make global trade more complicated, maybe even a little riskier. For the US, yeah, that probably means less influence. But for a lot of developing countries, hey, this could actually open up some brand new opportunities to trade more easily with their neighbors. But hang on a second. Before we all run around declaring the dollar dead, we need a serious reality check here. Because there's a really good reason why, despite everything we've talked about, the dollar is still incredibly strong. Yeah, let's be super clear about this. The dollar is not collapsing. Not anytime soon, anyway. The headlines can get pretty dramatic, but the reality on the ground is way more complicated. So why not? Well, for starters, the kind of trust the dollar has, that takes decades, sometimes even centuries to build up. You just can't snap your fingers and create that. Second, the alternatives we talked about, they're still pretty new and developing. And maybe most importantly, the US financial system is just so deeply, deeply embedded in pretty much everything. Untangling all of that is a massive, massive job. So here's the real takeaway. What we're seeing isn't some dramatic collapse. It's not about finding a single replacement for the dollar. What we're actually seeing is a slow, steady shift, an evolution towards a world where multiple currencies get to share the stage. So yeah, the global financial system is definitely changing, but it's not some loud, sudden revolution. It's more like a quiet evolution, happening one step at a time. And because of that, the real question we should be asking ourselves isn't, will the dollar disappear? Yes or no? The far more interesting and frankly more important question is this. Who's going to control money in the future? Because whoever ends up answering that question, well, they're going to hold an incredible amount of power in shaping the rest of this century.